There is a quiet tension that many carry without naming. It feels like reaching toward the next opportunity, the next breakthrough, the next relationship, the next confirmation that life is moving forward. Even in moments of rest, there is often a subtle leaning, an inner posture angled towards something not yet here. This leaning becomes so familiar that it feels normal. But normal does not mean natural. It is possible to live in a constant state of subtle pursuit, always slightly ahead of yourself, rarely settled into the present moment. You may call it ambition. You may call it growth. You may even call it faith. Yet beneath it, there is often an assumption. Something essential is not yet mine. Pause here. Notice what that assumption does to your nervous system. When you believe something essential is not yet yours, the body tightens slightly. There is vigilance, there is scanning, there is a background alertness that says, I must secure what I lack. This alertness can masquerade as motivation, but it is rarely peaceful. And peace is not the enemy of progress. Peace is the foundation of alignment. The unrest you feel is not because you are incapable. It is because you have unconsciously agreed with the idea of separation. Separation between you and what you desire. Separation between you and the version of yourself who has it. Separation between now and fulfillment. This separation is the root of striving. You imagine that fulfillment exists somewhere ahead, and you stand here, incomplete, waiting to cross the distance. But what if the distance is conceptual? What if what you seek is not withheld by time, but uninhabited in identity? This is the principle. Everything is yours already, not in form necessarily, but in potential within consciousness. Divine intelligence does not operate through scarcity. It operates through expression. Scripture speaks of the kingdom being within you, not approaching you, not descending upon you at random, within. If this is true, then what you call manifestation is not acquisition. It is revelation. Revelation of what has always been structurally available within the field of consciousness. Yet, availability does not guarantee embodiment. Embodiment requires identification. You do not receive what you merely want. You experience what you identify as true about yourself. This is not mystical exaggeration. It is psychological coherence. The brain filters reality according to self-concept. It highlights what aligns with identity and overlooks what contradicts it. If your identity is rooted in lack, you will see evidence of lack. If your identity is rooted in sufficiency, you will perceive sufficiency more readily. Perception organizes experience. Experience reinforces identity. This loop continues quietly. So if everything is already yours in potential, what remains? Occupation. You must occupy the state from which your desire is natural. Occupation is different from imagination alone. Imagination introduces the possibility. Occupation normalizes it. When you imagine being secure, you feel a moment of relief. But when you occupy security, you make calm decisions about money without anxiety. When you imagine being loved, you feel warmth. But when you occupy lovability, you interpret silence without panic. These small differences matter. They signal identity shift. Identity shift is the only real movement. Consider how often you delay peace until evidence appears. You tell yourself that when the relationship arrives, you will relax. When the promotion comes, you will breathe easier. When the debt is cleared, you will feel safe. But this sequence assumes that peace is the product of circumstance. What if peace is the precursor? What if the state you are postponing is the very state that allows circumstances to reorganize? This is not about pretending everything is perfect. It is about recognizing that the inner state of fulfillment does not require outer permission. You can inhabit dignity before others validate you. You can inhabit abundance before numbers confirm it. You can inhabit love before someone speaks it. Not as denial of current facts, but as orientation of identity. Faith, in its mature form, is not insisting that appearances are false. It is remaining loyal to a deeper truth about who you are. You are not a fragment seeking completion. You are consciousness expressing itself in form. When you forget this, you chase. When you remember this, you align. Alignment feels like settling. Settling does not mean resignation. It means you are no longer leaning forward anxiously. You stand where you are. Standing where you are changes how you see. You notice what is already present, a skill you have overlooked, a relationship that supports you, an opportunity that felt small but is aligned. Gratitude emerges naturally when you stop assuming absence. Gratitude is not a technique. It is the perception of sufficiency. Sufficiency calms the nervous system. A calm nervous system perceives more accurately. Accurate perception reveals possibilities that anxiety obscured. This is how inner sufficiency becomes outer movement. You may begin to notice subtle shifts. You respond to a setback with steadiness rather than despair. You decline something misaligned without guilt. You speak about your future without defensiveness. These are not dramatic changes. They are structural. They reveal that you are no longer operating from the assumption of lack. Lack was the only barrier, not because lack is immoral, but because lack divides you internally. When you assume something is not yours, you position yourself outside of it. You become a seeker rather than an expression. Seeking keeps fulfillment ahead. Expression brings fulfillment into now. This does not mean everything materializes instantly. It means your identity no longer waits for validation. When identity is stable, time loses its pressure. You are not racing toward completeness. You are expressing it gradually. Gradual expression feels natural. It does not require spectacle. It unfolds through consistent alignment. You wake and choose who you are being. You interpret events through sufficiency rather than scarcity. You act from wholeness rather than from fear. Each of these is an occupation of state. And the more consistently you occupy, the less distance you perceive. Distance dissolves when identity shifts. The future you imagined is no longer ahead. It is within your posture, within your tone, within your expectation. This is what it means, that everything is yours already. Not that every object is currently in your hand, but that every state is available to inhabit. States precede form. Form follows state. If you want love, inhabit openness. If you want prosperity, inhabit responsibility and calm stewardship. If you want respect, inhabit self-respect in small conversations. These are not strategies. They are expressions. Expression invites reflection. Reflection in the outer world confirms alignment. Confirmation strengthens identity. And the cycle continues. Over time, you may look back and realize that what once felt distant has become ordinary. Not because you chased it relentlessly, but because you stopped standing outside of it. You stopped treating fulfillment as a future event. You began living from it now. This living from is subtle. It is found in how you breathe when thinking about your desire. It is found in how you interpret silence. It is found in whether you speak about your future with ease or with tension. Ease signals possession at the level of identity. Tension signals perceived separation. So tonight, gently examine where you still feel separation. Not with judgment, with curiosity. Where do you still think that is not for someone like me? Where do you still brace for disappointment? These are places where identity has not yet shifted. And shifting does not require force. It requires consent. Consent to see yourself differently. Consent to imagine your life differently. Consent to behave as someone for whom fulfillment is natural. As you consent repeatedly, the unfamiliar becomes familiar. The familiar becomes normal. The normal becomes embodied. And embodiment precedes visible manifestation. You are not convincing the universe. You are convincing yourself, not through argument, through experience of alignment. When alignment feels peaceful, you know you have stepped into possession. Possession is inward first. Outward form follows its own rhythm. But you are no longer restless because you understand something previously unseen. You were never incomplete. You were simply unoccupied in certain states. Now you occupy them consciously. And as you do, your life rearranges around that occupation. Not hurriedly, not chaotically, but faithfully. So let your breath slow. Release the leaning. Release the sense that something essential is missing. Stand where you are. Feel the quiet sufficiency within you. Feel that you are not chasing your life. You are inhabiting it. Everything is yours already at the level of consciousness. And as you remain faithful to the identity aligned with that truth, form will follow in its time. But you are no longer waiting to be whole. You are whole now. Rest there. Remain there. And let the visible world gradually reflect the invisible completeness you have chosen to recognize within yourself. And as you rest in that recognition, another quiet adjustment begins to unfold within you. You notice that the urgency to compare your life to anyone else begins to soften. Comparison was born from the assumption that resources are limited, that timing is competitive, that fulfillment is distributed unevenly and must be secured before it is gone. But when you truly begin to sense that everything is already yours in potential, comparison loses its urgency. Another person's success no longer threatens you. Another person's love no longer diminishes your possibility. Another person's abundance no longer feels like evidence of your lack, because you understand something deeper now. Expression is individualized. The same divine source unfolds uniquely through each consciousness. What is yours cannot be intercepted. What is aligned with your identity does not require rivalry. This realization calms something ancient in the nervous system. The part that scans for scarcity, the part that competes quietly, the part that measures worth through relative position. When that scanning slows, attention becomes available again, available for presence. Presence is where identity stabilizes. When you are present, you are not projecting into an imagined future where fulfillment finally begins. You are inhabiting the state now. Inhabiting the state now means you treat yourself according to the identity you claim. If everything is already yours, you no longer speak to yourself as though you are behind. If everything is already yours, you no longer postpone dignity until evidence appears. If everything is already yours, you no longer entertain the thought that you must earn the right to exist fully. You exist fully now, and this fullness changes the texture of your choices. You choose differently when you are not trying to compensate for lack. You say no without guilt. You invest time in what nourishes you rather than what impresses others. You stop over-explaining your boundaries. These small movements are not dramatic, but they are aligned. Alignment is the living proof of inward possession. Possession at the level of consciousness does not inflate ego. It humbles it. You realize you were striving for what was never fundamentally separate from you. You see how often you postponed joy, thinking it would be safer to wait. You see how often you held back expression, fearing it would be premature. But expression is not premature when identity is aligned. Expression is simply the natural outflow of recognition. Recognition that you are not an outsider to your own life. Recognition that the divine pattern of sufficiency runs through you as surely as through anyone else. This recognition changes how you pray. Prayer becomes less about requesting, more about aligning. You are not begging for provision. You are consenting to embody it. You are not pleading for love. You are consenting to be open to it. You are not asking to be made worthy. You are acknowledging worth as inherent. Acknowledgement is powerful. It reorganizes the interior landscape. And when the interior landscape changes, behavior follows. Behavior following identity is the quiet engine of manifestation. Not because you are manipulating reality, but because reality is always reflecting consciousness. So when consciousness shifts from lack to sufficiency, reality gradually reflects that shift. Gradually is important. This is not about demanding instant proof. It is about trusting structure. Structure is steady. Steady does not rush. You may still experience moments of doubt, moments when old habits whisper that you are still waiting. When that happens, you do not panic. You return. Return to the truth that nothing essential is withheld. Return to the identity of wholeness. Return to the calm that comes from knowing you are not separate from your source. Return gently. Each return strengthens recognition. Recognition stabilizes identity. Identity shapes perception. Perception guides action. Action organizes life. This is not mystical complexity. It is quiet coherence. As you continue in this coherence, something unexpected happens. Gratitude deepens not because everything has changed, but because you see differently. You see how much was already present. You see how often you overlooked provision. You see how many doors were quietly open while you were focused on one closed possibility. Seeing abundance where you once saw absence changes your relationship to desire. Desire no longer feels like desperation. It feels like expansion. Expansion is natural when you are not starting from emptiness. You expand from fullness, and fullness is available now, not in perfection. But in essence, you are not required to deny difficulty. You are invited to deny separation. Separation was the illusion. Wholeness is the truth. Wholeness does not mean you have everything materially. It means you are not fragmented internally. You are unified in your belief that life is not against you. You are unified in your recognition that divine intelligence is not withholding from you. You are unified in your posture of trust. Trust does not eliminate challenge. It changes how you meet it. When you encounter obstacles from wholeness, you do not interpret them as proof of unworthiness. You interpret them as part of unfolding. Unfolding suggests that what is already structurally yours is moving into form. Form takes time. Identity takes decision. You have already made the decision to see yourself as included, to see yourself as capable, to see yourself as held within a structure of sufficiency rather than scarcity. This decision is subtle, but it is decisive. And as you rest in it, the leaning stops, the reaching softens, the urgency dissolves. You are not chasing what is already yours, in essence. You are living from it. Living from it means you move through the world with quiet assurance, not arrogant, not loud, simply steady. Steady in your worth, steady in your trust, steady in your expectation. And from that steadiness, life continues to arrange itself. You will notice it, not in spectacle, in coherence, in how things begin to feel less forced, in how conversations align without effort, in how opportunities feel timely rather than random. These are reflections of an identity no longer rooted in lack. So as we continue, let this settle even deeper. Everything is yours already, not because you deserve it more than others, but because you were never excluded from the field of divine sufficiency. You are not outside looking in. You are within, expressing outward. Remain there. Remain within, and allow the outer world to echo in its own faithful rhythm the completeness you have chosen to recognize as already present inside you. And as you continue to rest within that recognition, something almost imperceptible shifts in your sense of effort. Effort no longer feels like pushing against resistance. It begins to feel like participation in what is already unfolding. Participation carries a different quality in the body. There is movement, but not strain. There is intention, but not desperation. You are not trying to extract something from life. You are cooperating with a current that was already present. When everything is yours already at the level of consciousness, action is no longer a means to secure worth. Action becomes expression of alignment. You send the message because it feels natural, not because you are afraid of missing your chance. You apply for the opportunity because it resonates, not because you fear being left behind. The emotional tone behind action changes everything. When action is driven by lack, it carries tension. When action is driven by wholeness, it carries clarity. Clarity simplifies decisions. You are no longer overanalyzing every possibility. You are listening inwardly for resonance. What feels coherent with the identity you have chosen? What feels clean in your nervous system? Clean decisions are quiet. They do not require dramatic self-justification. They do not leave you replaying conversations in your mind. They settle, and that settling is another sign that you are living from possession rather than pursuit. Possession at the level of identity alters your relationship with waiting. Waiting once felt like suspension, like life had paused until the desired outcome appeared. But now waiting feels like gestation. Gestation is active, even when invisible. You are not suspended. You are becoming. Becoming is not a desperate scramble toward a future version of yourself. It is the gradual unveiling of what was structurally present all along. This changes how you interpret silence. Silence is no longer rejection. It is space. Space is not emptiness. It is potential. When you do not interpret silence as threat, your nervous system remains regulated. And a regulated nervous system makes wiser decisions. Wiser decisions align more easily with opportunity. Opportunity engaged from wholeness produces stable growth. Stable growth feels natural. It does not shock you. It does not overwhelm you. It feels like the next step that always belonged. This is the quiet paradox. When you stop treating your desire as distant, it stops feeling unreachable. Distance was a story that kept fulfillment always ahead. Now, fulfillment is a state you inhabit first. And as you inhabit it, you notice that your language changes. You speak less about when this finally happens. You speak more from as this unfolds. Subtle shift, but powerful. Language reflects identity. Identity shapes perception. Perception directs attention. Attention influences experience. So even your tone becomes part of embodiment. Embodiment is the key, not visualization alone, not affirmation alone. Embodiment means your body, your posture, your breath, your reactions all begin to align with the truth you claim. You walk differently when you feel secure. You make eye contact differently when you feel worthy. You listen differently when you feel abundant. These are not techniques. They are consequences of identity. And identity is chosen in stillness, chosen in moments like this, when you decide that separation was an illusion. When you decide that wholeness is not earned but recognized, recognition is restful. Restfulness is not stagnation. It is trust in divine order. Christ-centered mysticism speaks of abiding. Abide in me and I in you. Abiding is not striving to connect. It is remaining aware of connection that already exists. When you abide in wholeness, you no longer attempt to manufacture fulfillment. You allow it. Allowing is not passive. It is receptive strength. Receptive strength is steady. Steady people do not chase every possibility. They respond to what aligns. Response replaces reaction. Reaction was born of fear. Response is born of awareness. Awareness is what you are cultivating now. Awareness of how often you lean forward anxiously. Awareness of how often you postpone peace. Awareness of how often you treated yourself as incomplete. And gently, that pattern dissolves. You are not incomplete. You were simply identified with absence. Now you are identified with sufficiency. Sufficiency changes how you treat yourself in ordinary moments. You rest without guilt. You enjoy small pleasures without justification. You speak kindly to yourself when you falter. Self-kindness is not indulgence. It is alignment with truth. Truth that your worth is not conditional. Truth that divine intelligence does not ration dignity. Truth that nothing real is withheld. When you live from that truth, manifestation becomes secondary. Secondary because your primary concern is coherence. And coherence is present now. The outer world may take time to rearrange. But you are no longer impatient. Impatience was rooted in fear of missing out. There is nothing to miss when everything is already structurally available within consciousness. You cannot lose what is aligned with your identity. You can only delay inhabiting it. And you are no longer delaying. You are inhabiting. Inhabiting looks ordinary. It looks like calm. It looks like measured speech. It looks like thoughtful action. It looks like peace even before visible proof. Peace before proof is faith matured, not blind belief, not denial. Orientation. Orientation toward wholeness. Orientation toward sufficiency. Orientation toward trust. And as this orientation stabilizes, your life begins to feel less like a chase and more like a journey already underway. You are not trying to get somewhere. You are walking through what is already yours in essence. So remain attentive, not to what is missing, but to what is present. Remain gentle, not forcing the next chapter, but inhabiting this one fully. Remain steady, knowing that nothing essential is outside of you. Everything is yours already in potential. And as you continue to embody that truth quietly, faithfully, calmly, the visible world will continue to echo the invisible completeness you have chosen to live from. Stay there, inwardly settled, outwardly engaged, no longer reaching, simply expressing. And as you continue expressing, rather than reaching, another subtle liberation begins to unfold within you. You no longer feel the need to defend your peace. There was a time when your inner calm felt fragile. A single comment could disturb it. A small inconvenience could unravel it, because beneath the calm there was still the belief that something essential had not yet been secured. But when you recognize that everything is already yours in essence, calm no longer depends on outcomes. It becomes foundational. Foundational peace is different from temporary relief. Temporary relief comes when something goes your way. Foundational peace remains even when nothing dramatic changes. It is the peace of identity, not the peace of circumstance. This kind of peace changes how you interpret the world. You stop scanning conversations for hidden rejection. You stop assuming that delay equals denial. You stop bracing for loss in moments of joy. Bracing was rooted in the fear that what you had was fragile. But when you understand that nothing real can be taken from your identity, fear loses its authority. Fear may still whisper, but it no longer commands. And when fear no longer commands, your body relaxes. A relaxed body thinks differently. A relaxed body chooses differently. A relaxed body perceives differently. Perception from relaxation is clearer than perception from tension. Clear perception reveals alignment that tension obscured. You may begin to see that opportunities were always present, but anxiety narrowed your vision. Now, your vision widens. Widened vision is abundance in perception, before abundance in form. You notice resources you once overlooked. You recognize support that was quietly available. You sense timing more intuitively. This intuitive sense is not mystical exaggeration. It is the result of regulated awareness. When you are not fighting yourself internally, your mind is free to register nuance. Nuance gives action. Action from nuance is precise. Precision reduces wasted effort. Reduced wasted effort feels like grace. Grace is not random favor. It is movement without unnecessary friction. Friction decreases when you are no longer divided. Division was the internal argument between lack and sufficiency. Now sufficiency is winning, not loudly, but steadily. And as sufficiency becomes dominant, you stop negotiating your worth. You stop over-explaining your desires. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. This is not arrogance. It is integration. Integration means you are no longer split between who you are privately and who you are publicly. When public and private selves align, energy consolidates. Consolidated energy feels powerful, even in silence. You do not need to perform confidence. You inhabit it. You do not need to demand respect. You assume it calmly. You do not need to chase provision. You steward what is in front of you with care. These small embodiments are the quiet evidence that you have shifted from seeking to possessing. Possessing at the level of identity dissolves envy. Envy is born from the belief that someone else holds what you cannot access. But when you recognize that states are universally available within consciousness, envy transforms into inspiration. Inspiration is expansive. It says, if it is possible for them, it is structurally possible. This thought does not agitate you. It steadies you because you no longer feel excluded from possibility. Exclusion was the illusion. Inclusion is the truth. Inclusion means you are not outside the flow of divine sufficiency. You are within it. Living from within changes your posture toward difficulty. When difficulty arises, you do not interpret it as punishment. You interpret it as refinement. Refinement assumes value. Only what is valuable is refined. This perspective keeps you steady in challenge. You do not collapse into self-doubt at the first obstacle. You remain oriented toward wholeness. Orientation is your anchor. When orientation is secure, you do not drift far. You may sway briefly. You may question momentarily, but you return. Return becomes effortless because you are returning to what feels true. Truth feels steady in the body. It does not spike. It does not tremble. It rests. And resting in truth is the highest expression of faith. Faith not as denial of circumstance. Faith as fidelity to identity. You are faithful to the identity of sufficiency. Faithful to the identity of inclusion. Faithful to the identity of worth. And as you remain faithful, your external life rearranges gradually. You will notice doors opening that once seemed closed. You will notice conversations unfolding with less resistance. You will notice that what once required strain now requires only presence. Presence is the final integration. When you are fully present, you are not divided between now and later. You are here, whole, available, attentive. In presence, everything is already happening. Not because all outcomes have appeared, but because you are no longer postponing yourself. You are living now. And living now from wholeness changes everything. It changes how you treat time. It changes how you treat people. It changes how you treat yourself. You are no longer waiting to become enough. You are expressing enoughness now. Expression is natural when you stop doubting your inclusion. So let yourself remain here. In the quiet, knowing that nothing essential is missing. In the calm awareness that nothing real is withheld. In the steady trust that what aligns with your identity will unfold without force. You are not behind. You are not excluded. You are not incomplete. Everything is yours already at the level of being. And from that being, life will continue to shape itself around your quiet, sustained coherence. Stay here, soft, steady, undivided, and allow the outer world to continue echoing the inner wholeness you have chosen to recognize as true. And now, let the movement of all these thoughts slow into something even quieter. You have traced the arc from reaching to resting, from striving to inhabiting, from believing that something essential was ahead of you, to recognizing that nothing essential has ever been outside of you. This is the realization. Everything is yours already, not as possession of objects, but as access to states. access to peace, access to dignity, access to love, access to abundance of being. You were not waiting for life to begin. You were waiting to consent to your own wholeness. And now, consent has replaced struggle. You no longer lean forward anxiously into the future. You stand where you are. You breathe where you are. You live where you are. This does not freeze growth. It purifies it. Growth from lack is restless. Growth from wholeness is creative. You will still expand. You will still desire. You will still move toward new expressions. But you will not do so as someone incomplete. You will move as someone expressing fullness. That changes the rhythm of your days. There is less hurry, less comparison, less inner negotiation. You are not trying to secure your place in the world. You are living from the understanding that you already belong. Belonging softens the body.